My name is Eva Thomas, and the night my marriage ended did not begin with shouting or tears. It began with a dinner invitation that looked polite on the surface and felt like a verdict underneath. My husband, Blake Carter, and my younger sister, Lily Thomas, asked me to meet them at a restaurant we used to visit on anniversaries and promotions. They said we needed to talk like adults and settle things cleanly. They believed this meeting would close a chapter of my life in their favor. They believed I was coming to surrender. What they did not know was that this dinner would become the place where their story started to fall apart. The Copper Finch was quiet in the way expensive places always are, where voices stay low and nothing feels accidental. I arrived first and sat in a booth near the back, my hands folded around a glass of water I did not drink. I watched the room instead of the door, because looking at the door felt like waiting for impact. For 3 weeks, my life had been paused in a strange state between shock and clarity. I had learned things I could not unlearn, and I had stopped reacting the way everyone expected me to. That frightened people. It especially frightened the two who were about to walk in. When Blake and Lily arrived, they came together. That detail mattered. Blake walked slightly ahead, already wearing the careful expression he used when he wanted something. Lily stayed close to him, one hand resting on her stomach, her body angled to make that gesture impossible to miss. They looked rehearsed, like people who had practiced their roles in advance. Blake smiled when he saw me, the controlled smile of a man who believed the hardest part was already over. Lily smiled too, softer, as if she were asking for understanding she assumed she deserved. They sat across from me, and for a moment no one spoke. Blake broke the silence first. He talked about keeping things calm, about respect, about avoiding lawyers and public messes. He spoke as if the damage had already been done and all that remained was paperwork. Lily followed his lead, talking about stress, about family, about the future. She mentioned the baby early, as if it were a shield. She said my name the way she always had when she wanted something from me. They believed I was still the person who fixed problems quietly. They believed I would pay whatever price was necessary to make the situation disappear. As they talked, I watched them instead of listening. I noticed how Blake avoided my eyes when he mentioned money. I noticed how Lily touched her stomach every time the conversation shifted toward assets or support. They were confident. They were calm. They thought the outcome was already decided. When they finally paused, waiting for my response, I did not answer right away. I reached down beside me and lifted a thick envelope onto the table. I did not open it. I did not slide it toward them. I let it land between us and rested my hands on either side of it. The sound it made was small, but it changed the air at the table. Blake stopped leaning forward. Lily's hand stilled. "Before we talk about dividing anything," I said, "there is something you both seem to have forgotten. This meeting is not about what you want. It is about what is true." They looked at the envelope, then back at me. For the first time that night, neither of them smiled. And as I sat there across from my husband and my sister, I knew this dinner was no longer a negotiation. It was the beginning of a reckoning they were not prepared for. After I spoke, neither of them replied immediately. Blake recovered first. He leaned back slightly, as if he were reassessing a deal that had taken an unexpected turn, and asked what I meant by true. His voice stayed even, but his confidence had thinned. Lily did not speak at all. She watched me closely, as if trying to decide whether I was bluffing or breaking. I told them the truth was simple. For weeks, they had been planning this conversation, deciding how much of my life they could take and how quickly they could move on. They believed I would accept their version of events because it was convenient for them. That assumption was their first mistake. I said nothing more than that, and the silence that followed forced them to fill the space themselves. Blake cleared his throat and started again, this time more carefully. He said we needed to be practical. He said emotions could not change facts. He said the marriage was over, and it was better to focus on solutions. He repeated the numbers he had already prepared, listing assets and percentages as if he were reading from a script. While he talked, Lily nodded in agreement, adding small comments about stability and fairness. She mentioned the baby again, stressing how important it was to avoid stress and conflict. I let them speak until they reached the point where they expected me to respond. When they stopped, I asked Blake a single question. I asked him how long he thought this arrangement would protect him. He frowned and asked what I meant. I asked how long he believed I would continue paying for his decisions once the paperwork was signed. That was when his expression changed. He told me I was being bitter. He said I was trying to punish him for moving on. Lily stepped in quickly, telling him to stay calm, then turned to me and asked why I was making things harder than they needed to be. I told her I wasn't making anything harder. I was letting them speak freely so they could hear themselves. Lily's eyes narrowed. She said she did not understand why I was acting this way. She reminded me of everything we had been through as sisters. She reminded me of how strong I was, how capable, how well I would recover compared to them. It was the same argument dressed in softer words. I let her finish before answering. I told her strength was not an excuse to be used. I told her that being capable did not mean being obligated. Blake interrupted me then, his patience gone. He said this conversation was going nowhere. He said if I refused to cooperate, things would get complicated. Lawyers would get involved. Stories would spread. People at my company would hear things they did not need to hear. That threat landed exactly where he intended it to. I looked at him and asked if he was trying to intimidate me. He hesitated before answering, which was answer enough. Lily reached for his hand under the table, and that small gesture told me more than anything else they had said. I told them we would meet again. Not tonight. I told them I needed time to review everything properly. Blake protested, saying delays helped no one. Lily said stress was dangerous. I stood up before either of them could continue. I said we would talk soon, and when we did, everything would be settled. As I walked away from the table, I felt them watching me. They believed they were still in control. They believed time worked in their favor. They did not know that every minute they were waiting was a minute I was preparing to end this on my terms. The pressure started before I reached my car. By the time I was home, my phone was already filling with missed calls and messages. Blake wanted clarity. Lily wanted reassurance. Both wanted control back. I did not respond to either of them. Silence unsettles people who are used to being indulged, and I needed them unsettled. The next call came from my mother. She did not ask how I was. She asked what I had done. She said Lily was crying, that Blake was panicking, that everyone was worried about the baby. She said families survive difficult moments by being flexible and forgiving. I listened without interrupting, because I needed to hear how quickly the story had already shifted. By the end of the call, I was no longer a betrayed wife. I was a problem that needed to be managed. I told my mother I would handle it. I ended the call before she could ask me to promise anything. That night, I did not sleep. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because my mind was working through patterns I had ignored for years. Every time something went wrong in my family, I had been expected to absorb it. Every mistake was softened for Lily. Every consequence was redirected toward me. This situation was not new, only the scale was. The next morning, Blake sent a message asking if we could talk privately. He said he was worried about escalation. He said lawyers would complicate things and hurt everyone. I replied with one sentence. I said I would reach out when I was ready. That was enough to make him nervous. People like Blake mistake access for power. Removing access is the fastest way to expose how little leverage they actually have. Lily tried a different approach. She sent long messages about fear and uncertainty. She said she felt sick. She said stress was dangerous. She said she trusted me to do the right thing. Each message carried the same message beneath the words. Fix this, pay for this, make it go away. I did not respond to her either. Instead, I made 2 calls. One was to my lawyer, the other was to my bank. By noon, my finances were no longer shared. By evening, Blake's access to my accounts was gone. I did not announce it, I waited. The reaction came quickly. Blake called twice, then 3 times. Then he left a message asking if something was wrong with the card. I waited an hour before replying. I told him it must be a temporary issue. That was the moment he realized he was no longer safe. Later that night, Lily showed up at my building without warning. She looked distressed on purpose. She said she needed help. She said she didn't know where else to go. I let her inside. I watched her carefully as she talked, noting what she emphasized and what she avoided. She asked for money without asking for money. She described problems that required immediate solutions. She kept touching her stomach when she spoke. While she talked, something felt wrong, not emotionally, structurally. The details did not align the way they should have. When she leaned toward me, I noticed something I had not seen before. It was brief, but it stayed with me. After she left, I stood alone in my apartment and replayed the moment again and again. What I had seen did not match what I had been told. And if that was true, then everything they were demanding rested on a lie. That night, I stopped thinking about survival. I started thinking about proof. The next day, I did not confront anyone. I acted as if I were overwhelmed and uncertain, exactly the version of me they expected to see. That illusion bought me time. Time was the only thing I needed. I started with records. Not memories, not feelings, only facts. I opened files I had not touched in years and reviewed decisions I had once made for practical reasons and then forgotten about. Contracts, ownership papers, agreements that existed because I had learned long ago that trust without structure was a liability. Each document confirmed the same thing. The life Blake and Lily were trying to divide did not legally belong to both of them. That was reassuring, but reassurance was not enough. Their main leverage was still the same. The baby. Everything they asked for rested on that claim. Money, sympathy, urgency. Without it, they had nothing. With it, they believed they were untouchable. I replayed Lily's visit in my head, focusing on details I would normally dismiss. The way she positioned herself. The way she avoided standing straight. The way her hand pressed instead of rested. These were not emotional observations. They were inconsistencies. I needed confirmation, not intuition. I waited until evening and then sent Lily a short message. I asked if she was feeling any better. I said I was worried and wanted to help, but that we needed to settle things properly instead of dragging them out. Her reply came quickly, too quickly. She thanked me. She said she knew I would come around. She suggested we meet again soon and finish everything. That response told me more than she realized. She was eager, not relieved, not cautious, eager. The next morning, Blake called again. His tone was different now, less confident. He asked if I had spoken to a lawyer. I told him not yet. That was a lie, but a useful one. He warned me again about how messy things could get if this turned hostile. I asked him a simple question in return. I asked him if he was absolutely sure about everything he was claiming. He hesitated before answering. That hesitation stayed with me. By afternoon, I had arranged what I needed without telling anyone. I requested copies of old medical records that were still legally accessible to me. I did not know yet whether they would matter, but experience had taught me never to ignore dormant information. I also reviewed financial statements that showed patterns Blake never bothered to hide because he assumed I would never look closely. That evening, Lily messaged again. She said the stress was getting worse. She said she was scared. She asked if we could meet the next night and settle things for the baby's sake. I agreed. I suggested the same restaurant. Familiar ground made people careless. After sending the message, I sat in silence and reviewed what I had so far. They were rushing. I was not. That difference mattered. People who feel time slipping away make mistakes. People who believe they are winning talk too much. I prepared an envelope and left it empty. Not because I lacked evidence, but because I wanted to decide exactly when to place it there. Whatever was going to happen next would not be emotional. It would be precise. By the end of that night, I was certain of one thing. The story they were telling depended entirely on my willingness to accept it. And I was done accepting anything without proof. By the time we agreed to meet again, Blake and Lily had fully convinced themselves that I was giving in. Their messages shifted in tone. Blake stopped warning me about consequences and started talking about logistics. Lily stopped sounding frightened and started sounding grateful. Gratitude is often a signal that someone believes the outcome is secured. The morning of the meeting, Blake sent me a document he called a draft. It outlined how assets would be divided, how quickly the apartment would be sold, and how support would be structured. He framed it as fair and temporary. He wrote that once things stabilized, they would no longer need my help. That line stood out. People who plan to let go rarely say it out loud. Lily followed up with a message of her own. She thanked me for being mature. She said she knew this was hard, but that I was doing the right thing. She mentioned the baby again, tying every sentence back to urgency. I replied with short, neutral responses. I needed them relaxed, not suspicious. Before leaving, I checked my phone and saw the medical records had arrived. I did not open them yet. I did not need to. The fact that they existed was enough for the moment. Proof is most effective when it is timed correctly. At the restaurant, I arrived early again. This time, I brought the envelope with me. It was heavier now, filled with documents I had carefully chosen. I did not plan to use all of them. I planned to use only what was necessary. People collapse faster when they do not know how much more you are holding back. Blake and Lily arrived together again. This time, Blake looked relieved. Lily looked proud. They sat down and immediately started talking. Blake thanked me for being reasonable. He said this was the best outcome for everyone. Lily added that she had always known I would protect family. She said she would never forget what I was doing for her. I let them talk. I let them repeat their version of events. I let Blake restate his claims, including his role as a father. I let Lily confirm it without hesitation. I asked no questions. I took no notes. I simply waited until they were finished. When they finally paused, Blake slid the document toward me and placed a pen beside it. He said we could sign now and save everyone weeks of stress. He said the sooner this was done, the sooner everyone could move forward. Lily watched my hands instead of my face. I picked up the pen but did not sign. I asked Blake one last question. I asked him if he was willing to swear, in writing, that everything he had just said was true. That included the baby, the timeline, and his expectations. He looked confused for a moment, then laughed. He said of course he was. He said there was nothing to hide. I nodded and placed the pen back on the table. Then I slid the envelope between us. I told them there was just one thing left to clarify before anyone signed anything. I told them that once this envelope was opened, there would be no way to undo what came next. Blake frowned. Lily's hand tightened around her glass. I told them to take their time. I told them to read carefully. And I told them that whatever happened next would be the result of their own words, not mine. That was when the confidence finally left the table. Blake reached for the envelope first. Lily stopped him with a light touch on his wrist, then looked at me and asked what this was. Her voice was calm, but the question was not. I told them it was clarification, nothing more. Blake opened the envelope anyway. He skimmed the first page quickly, too quickly to understand it. His expression stayed neutral until he reached the second page. Then he slowed down. He read it again. Lily leaned closer, trying to see what he was seeing. I watched the color drain from his face in stages, as if his mind was struggling to keep up with what his eyes were telling him. Lily asked what it was. Blake did not answer right away. He turned the page, then another. His breathing changed. Lily took the papers from his hands and began reading herself. At first, she smiled faintly, still assuming this was a formality. That smile disappeared when she reached the section she did not expect. She looked up at me and said my name sharply, as if that alone could reset the situation. She said this made no sense. She said there had to be a mistake. Blake finally spoke then. He asked where I got these documents. I told him they were always there. I had simply stopped ignoring them. The room felt smaller. Blake tried to regain control by explaining. He said documents could be misinterpreted. He said paperwork did not change reality. Lily nodded along, repeating that none of this mattered compared to the baby. She said everything else was noise. That was when I asked them both to say it again. I asked them to repeat clearly what they were claiming. Blake hesitated. Lily did not. She said the baby was his. She said it confidently, loudly enough for anyone nearby to hear. Blake followed a second later, repeating the same claim with less certainty. I let that moment settle. Then I told them to turn to the last page. Blake flipped it slowly this time. Lily leaned back, watching his face instead of the paper. When he reached the end, he froze. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. Lily grabbed the page from him and read it herself. Her reaction was different. She laughed once, sharply, and said this was ridiculous. She said medical reports could be wrong. She said people beat odds all the time. Blake did not laugh. He stared at the table, his hands shaking slightly. I told them the report was not recent. I told them it was from years ago. I told them it had been verified. I told them the diagnosis was permanent. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I stated facts. Blake whispered that this could not be true. He said no one had ever told him that. I reminded him that the letter had arrived and been ignored. Lily cut in, saying this was an attack, that I was trying to humiliate them. She said even if there were questions, this was not the time to raise them. I told her this was the only time. I explained that if the claim about the baby was false, then every demand they had made was built on fraud. I explained that if it was true, then Blake was not the father. Either way, nothing they were asking for held up. Blake finally looked at Lily then, not with love, with doubt. She told him to stop. She told him not to listen to me. She told him I was manipulating him. He did not respond. The silence between them was loud enough to break something. I closed the envelope and stood up. I told them we were finished talking for the night. I told them their next move should be careful. And I told them that whatever story they planned to tell next, they needed to decide together, because the one they had been using no longer worked. Then I walked away, leaving them at the table with a truth they could not escape. The calls started before I reached home. Blake called first. I did not answer. Lily called next. I did not answer her either. By the third call, I turned my phone off. They needed time to panic without me correcting them. The next morning, Blake left a message. His voice sounded strained. He said we needed to talk immediately. He said there had to be an explanation. He said mistakes happened in reports all the time. He said doctors were wrong. He said nothing with certainty except that he was afraid. Lily's message was different. She sounded angry, not scared. She said I had embarrassed her. She said I had no right to bring private documents into a public place. She said I was trying to destroy her life out of spite. She did not deny anything directly. That absence mattered. I let the day pass without responding. By evening, Blake sent another message, this one shorter. He asked if Lily had told me something. That was the moment I knew the damage was spreading in the direction I wanted. Late that night, Lily showed up again. She did not text first. She knocked. Hard. When I opened the door, she walked past me without waiting for permission. She was no longer playing the fragile role. She was furious. She demanded to know what else I had. She demanded to know how much Blake knew. She demanded to know if I had told anyone. I told her nothing. I told her I had only shown what already existed. She said I was lying. She said I had always been jealous of her. She said this was my way of punishing her for being happy. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I asked her a simple question. I asked her to look at me and tell me the truth. She did not answer right away. Instead, she adjusted her posture and crossed her arms, shielding herself out of habit. That movement confirmed what I already suspected. I told her she could stop pretending. I told her I had seen enough. She laughed then, but it was not convincing. She said I was imagining things. She said stress was making me paranoid. I asked her why she was wearing something she did not need. Her eyes flicked down before she could stop herself. The room went silent. I told her to leave. She refused. She said I owed her. She said I had always owed her. She stepped closer and told me Blake would never believe me. She said men always chose her. She said I could not prove anything. I picked up my phone and unlocked it. I showed her the image I had taken. I did not explain it. I did not label it. I let her recognize it herself. Her face changed instantly. The anger vanished. What replaced it was calculation. She told me we could fix this. She said no one needed to know. She said we could still settle everything quietly. She said she would disappear if I paid her enough to start over. She said Blake never needed to find out. I told her to get out. She stared at me for a long moment, then picked up her bag and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back and told me I had made a mistake. She said I did not understand how far this could go. She said I would regret choosing this path. When the door closed behind her, I locked it and leaned against it, listening to my own breathing. There was no doubt left. The lie was confirmed. The threat was real, and the next move would not come from me. It would come from them. The next move came sooner than I expected. By morning, Blake had left 4 messages. Each one sounded different from the last. Confusion turned into anger, anger into bargaining. In the final message, he asked me to meet him alone. He said Lily was unstable. He said she had lied to both of us. He said he needed to understand what was real before everything collapsed. I agreed to meet him, but not privately. I chose a place where people listened without meaning to. Blake arrived early and stood when he saw me, as if trying to show respect he had never shown before. He did not look confident. He looked exposed. He started talking immediately. He said Lily had confessed to exaggerating. He said she admitted she was under pressure. He said she swore the baby was real, but blamed stress for inconsistencies. He watched my face closely while he spoke, searching for relief. He did not find it. I asked him one question. I asked him whether he had ever been told he could not have children. He shook his head quickly and said no. He said that was impossible. He said doctors would not miss something like that. I told him the report was clear and dated years back. I told him it was addressed to him. I told him he had signed for it. That was when his hands started to shake. He said he never opened it. He said everything was happening too fast. He said Lily had assured him it was his child and that biology did not matter anymore. I asked him if he believed that. He did not answer. I told him there was more, not accusations, evidence. I told him Lily had been wearing something she should not need. I told him I had proof. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the floor. He said she would never do that. He said she was impulsive, not cruel. He said she loved him. I told him love did not require costumes. The silence stretched until he finally asked what would happen next. I told him that depended on his choices. I told him he could continue standing beside her and face what followed, or he could stop lying to himself and step away before things turned public. I did not threaten him. I did not raise my voice. I let the situation speak for itself. He asked if I planned to ruin them. I told him I planned to end this. How it ended depended on how hard they pushed. That was the only answer I gave him. That afternoon, Lily sent a message pretending nothing had happened. She asked if I had spoken to Blake. She said he was confused and emotional. She said stress was affecting him. She asked me not to upset him further. I did not reply. Instead, I forwarded the evidence to my lawyer and waited. By evening, Blake sent one last message. He said Lily had disappeared. He said she was not answering calls. He said she left behind her bag. He asked if she had been with me. I looked at the message for a long time before replying. I told him I had not seen her since the night before. That was true. What I did not tell him was that when lies begin to collapse, people either run or attack. And Lily had never been the type to run quietly. Lily resurfaced the next morning, not quietly and not alone. Blake called me before I had finished my coffee. His voice was sharp and urgent. He said Lily had gone to our parents. He said she had told them everything, or at least her version of it. He said they wanted to talk to me immediately. He said this was getting out of control. I told him it already was. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was my father. He asked me what was going on. He said Lily was devastated. He said Blake was confused. He said families do not tear each other apart over misunderstandings. I listened until he finished, then told him there was no misunderstanding. I told him there were facts, and those facts would not change because they were inconvenient. My mother took the phone next. She asked me if I was trying to destroy Lily's life. She asked me how I could do this to my own sister. She said Lily was pregnant and vulnerable, and that stress could harm the baby. I asked her one question. I asked her if Lily had shown her any medical proof. She went quiet for a moment, then said that was beside the point. That answer told me everything. By afternoon, Lily sent a message to the family group chat. She wrote that she was being harassed. She wrote that I was spreading lies. She wrote that Blake was being manipulated. She asked for protection. Within minutes, relatives started responding. Some told her to stay strong. Some asked me what I had done. I did not reply to any of them. Instead, I called my lawyer again. By evening, Blake showed up at my door without warning. He looked exhausted. He said Lily had admitted something, but not enough. He said she claimed the doctors were wrong. He said she accused me of planting ideas in his head. He asked me if I would show him everything I had, just once, so he could decide who to believe. I told him to sit down. I showed him the receipt. I showed him the photo. I showed him the dates. I did not explain, I did not argue, I let him connect the pieces himself. He stared at the screen for a long time. When he finally looked up, his face had changed. The fear was gone. What replaced it was anger. He asked me why I had not told him sooner. I told him he had never listened sooner. He asked me what Lily wanted. I told him she wanted money and silence. He asked me what would happen if he walked away. I told him that was the only move that might limit the damage. He stood up slowly. He said he needed time to think. I told him time was no longer on his side. That night, Lily sent me one final message. She said Blake was turning against her. She said I had poisoned him. She said if I did not fix this, she would make sure everyone knew what kind of person I really was. She said she was done being reasonable. I did not reply. I forwarded the message to my lawyer and turned my phone off. At that point, the lie had collapsed completely. The only thing left was deciding how loud the ending would be. The next morning, the threat became real. I woke up to messages from colleagues asking if I was okay. That was when I knew Lily had stopped trying to contain the damage. Someone had talked. Someone had hinted. The story had started moving without my permission. Blake called again, this time openly angry. He said Lily was telling people I had fabricated documents. He said she was claiming I was unstable and vindictive. He said she had contacted his employer and implied there were legal issues coming. That move told me she was cornered. I did not argue with him. I asked one question. I asked whether he had denied anything she said. He went quiet. Then he said he didn't know what to say anymore. He said every conversation with her ended in panic or accusation. He said she kept insisting the situation could still be fixed if I backed off. I told him that was no longer possible. By noon, my lawyer called. She said Lily had contacted her office indirectly, asking what it would take to make everything disappear. She said Lily was floating numbers without understanding the consequences. She said this was the behavior of someone who knew she had lost control. That afternoon, Lily sent me a message that was clearly written for screenshots. She accused me of abuse. She accused me of manipulation. She accused me of trying to steal her child's future. The language was dramatic and careful at the same time. I did not respond. Responding would only give her material. Instead, I prepared. I documented everything: messages, calls, timelines. I organized the evidence into a single file that showed sequence and intent. Lies fall apart when they are placed next to each other. I made sure they were. That evening, Blake showed up again. This time, he did not knock. He waited. When I opened the door, he asked if he could come in. He did not look angry anymore. He looked defeated. He said Lily had admitted the truth in pieces. Not all of it. Enough to confirm what I had already proven. He said she had begged him to stay quiet. He said she promised they could still make money if they worked together. I asked him what he wanted. He said he wanted out. He said he did not want to be part of this anymore. He said he would tell the truth if it came to that. I told him the truth was no longer something he controlled. It would come out whether he wanted it to or not. He asked me if there was any way to stop this from becoming public. I told him there was only one way left, and it depended on Lily's next move, not his. That night, Lily made her move. She filed a formal complaint, not in court, online. She posted a long statement accusing me of cruelty, betrayal, and financial abuse. She claimed I was trying to erase her and her child. She tagged people who mattered. She named names. Within minutes, the post began spreading. I watched it without reacting. Panic thrives on response. I gave her none. I forwarded the post to my lawyer and waited. Because once lies go public, truth does not need to chase them. It only needs to arrive once. By morning, the post was everywhere. People who barely knew me were forming opinions based on a story designed to provoke sympathy and outrage. Lily had written it carefully. She framed herself as a victim pushed into silence by power and money. She avoided specifics. She relied on emotion. That was intentional. Lies spread faster when they sound wounded. I did not respond publicly. That decision confused people who expected denial or explanation. Silence was read as guilt by some, but it also created space. Space for facts. My lawyer moved first. She sent formal notices to Lily and Blake, outlining defamation, extortion, and fraud. The language was precise. No accusations, only consequences. Within an hour, Lily deleted the post. Screenshots had already been taken. Deleting it only confirmed panic. Blake called again. He said Lily was spiraling. He said she was calling relatives, friends, anyone who would listen. He said she was saying I had threatened her. I asked him if she had mentioned the evidence. He said no, she avoided it completely. That avoidance was another admission. That afternoon, Lily made a mistake. She sent a message meant for someone else to the family group chat. It was brief, angry, and unfiltered. She accused Blake of betraying her. She said he was weak. She said he was letting me ruin everything. She wrote that the plan would have worked if he had stayed loyal. She deleted it within seconds. It was not fast enough. The message confirmed intent, not confusion, not fear, planning. Relatives started asking questions, not emotional ones, practical ones. Lily stopped answering. Blake stopped defending her. The shift was subtle but irreversible. People sense when a story no longer holds. That evening, Blake came over one last time. He did not sit down. He stood and told me Lily had admitted she was never pregnant. He said she broke down when she realized no one believed her anymore. He said she blamed me for forcing her into the lie. He said she claimed she only did it because she thought I would give in. I asked him if he understood what that meant. He nodded. He said everything they had demanded was based on a falsehood. He said he had been used. I told him being used did not erase responsibility. He did not argue. He asked what would happen to Lily. I told him that depended on how far she continued to push. I told him that if she stopped now, the damage would remain limited. If she didn't, it would become permanent. That night, Lily sent me a final message. Not angry, not pleading, calculated. She said she was willing to admit everything publicly if I agreed to settle quietly. She said she would apologize. She said she would disappear. She asked for a number. I did not reply. I forwarded the message to my lawyer and closed the file. The trap was complete. All that remained was letting Lily choose how badly she wanted to escape it. Lily did not wait for my answer. By the next morning, she had made her choice. She posted again, this time shorter, sharper, and more aggressive. She claimed she had been forced to lie earlier because she was afraid. She said she had been threatened into silence. She said powerful people were trying to erase her story. She did not mention pregnancy directly. She let readers assume it. That ambiguity was deliberate. My lawyer advised me to wait 2 hours before responding, not to negotiate, to prepare. During those 2 hours, Lily sent private messages to people who mattered to me, colleagues, distant relatives, old friends. She warned them about me. She suggested I was dangerous. She implied legal action was coming. She believed volume could replace truth. Then she made her final mistake. She sent me an email marked urgent, copying Blake, my parents, and 3 extended family members. In it, she admitted she had exaggerated details, but insisted she had done it out of fear. She asked for a private settlement to avoid court. She wrote that public exposure would destroy everyone. She forgot one thing. Contradictions do not disappear when you rename them. My lawyer responded to all recipients. The reply contained no emotion. It contained a timeline, screenshots, receipts, statements. Lily's own words, placed beside each other, showed intent clearly enough that no interpretation was required. The message ended with a single sentence. Further contact should be directed through counsel. Within minutes, Lily called. I did not answer. She called again. I blocked the number. Blake called next. He said my parents were asking questions. He said relatives were confused. He said Lily was hysterical. I told him I was no longer part of their conversations. I told him everything had moved beyond private resolution. That afternoon, my parents came to my apartment. They did not accuse me this time. They asked what had happened. I showed them only what they needed to see, not everything. Enough, my mother cried. My father stayed silent. Neither defended Lily. That silence was the loudest moment of the entire ordeal. By evening, Lily's accounts were gone, deactivated, her messages stopped. Blake informed me she had contacted a lawyer of her own. I told him that was wise. I spent the night organizing one final file, not for court, for closure. It contained every message, every document, every claim made and retracted. I labeled it clearly and stored it where it would not be lost. The next move would not involve arguments or public posts. It would involve consequences. And for the first time since this began, I slept without waiting for my phone to ring. The silence lasted 2 days. No messages, no calls, no posts. That kind of silence is never peace. It is preparation. On the third morning, my lawyer called and told me Lily's attorney had reached out. The tone was no longer aggressive. It was cautious. They wanted to discuss options. They wanted to know what I intended to do next. That question told me everything. People who still believe they are winning do not ask it. I agreed to one meeting, not privately, not emotionally, structured and recorded. Blake was included by default. He did not argue. He sounded relieved to be told where to sit and when to speak. Lily joined late. She did not look confident anymore. She looked alert, the way people do when they know one wrong word will end them. Her lawyer spoke first. He framed Lily's actions as panic and poor judgment. He said she had acted under emotional strain. He said there was no malicious intent. Lily nodded along, eyes lowered. When asked directly whether she had ever been pregnant, she hesitated before saying no. That pause mattered. I did not react. I let her finish. My lawyer then asked Lily to explain the posts, the messages, the demands, and the attempt to secure money in exchange for silence. Lily tried to redirect. She said she had felt abandoned. She said she had been afraid. She said she had never expected things to go this far. Each sentence contradicted the last. Blake was asked to speak next. He confirmed everything without embellishment. He admitted he had believed the lie because it was convenient. He admitted he had repeated it because it benefited him. He did not defend Lily. He did not defend himself. The room shifted at that point. Lily realized she was alone. Her lawyer asked what I wanted. I said I wanted the truth on record. I said I wanted all false statements withdrawn. I said I wanted no further contact. I said I wanted every demand formally retracted. I did not ask for money. I did not ask for apologies. That unsettled them more than anger would have. Lily tried once more. She said she had made mistakes but did not deserve to lose everything. I asked her what she thought she was losing. She did not answer. The meeting ended without agreement. That was expected. People like Lily only understand loss when it happens, not when it is explained. That evening, Blake sent me a message saying Lily had blamed him for everything. He said she accused him of weakness. He said she claimed I had manipulated him from the start. I did not respond. Later that night, my lawyer forwarded me a notification. Lily's attorney had withdrawn representation due to non-disclosure. That meant Lily had lied to him too. At that point, the false victory Lily had been chasing was gone. All that remained was exposure. And she still had not realized how much of it was coming. The exposure did not arrive loudly. It arrived in fragments. First, a former friend contacted my lawyer asking whether the claims Lily had made were true. Then a colleague forwarded a message Lily had sent weeks earlier, asking for help protecting a story. Each piece confirmed the same thing. Lily had been laying groundwork long before I noticed. The lie was not impulsive. It was planned. By the end of the week, 3 people who had publicly supported Lily withdrew their statements. No explanations, just silence. Silence is what people choose when they realize they backed the wrong version of events. My lawyer advised one final step, not retaliation, closure with teeth. We scheduled a formal mediation, required attendance, recorded. Lily could refuse, but refusal would be noted. She did not refuse. She arrived late again. That pattern never changed. Blake was already there. He did not look at her. She noticed and stiffened. Her confidence depended on shared blame. Without it, she had nothing. The mediator explained the process. Lily interrupted twice. She insisted she had already admitted mistakes. She insisted this had gone far enough. My lawyer asked her one question: had she ever requested money in exchange for silence? Lily said no. The mediator asked her to clarify. Lily repeated no. My lawyer then played the recording. It was Lily's voice, calm, direct, naming a number, explaining that public retractions could be arranged. The room went silent. Lily stared at the table. The mediator stopped the playback and asked if the voice was hers. Lily did not answer. Her lawyer asked for a break. During that break, Blake stood and left the room without speaking to her. That was the moment Lily lost the last thing protecting her. She followed him into the hallway, but he did not stop. When the meeting resumed, Lily's posture had changed. She was no longer defiant. She was calculating damage. She admitted to the request. She admitted to exaggeration. She admitted to pressure tactics. She framed everything as desperation. Desperation does not excuse intent. The mediator asked what resolution I was seeking. I stated it clearly. All false claims withdrawn, written acknowledgement of fabrication, no further contact. Compliance with any legal consequences that followed. Lily's lawyer asked if there was room for compromise. I said no. The meeting ended shortly after. That evening, Lily posted a statement, not the one she had threatened earlier. This one was brief. She admitted she had lied. She admitted there was no pregnancy. She apologized for causing harm. She asked for privacy. Within minutes, the reactions shifted. Sympathy drained. Questions appeared. Screenshots resurfaced. People remembered what they had been told. Blake filed for divorce the next morning. By noon, Lily's apology was no longer controlling the narrative. It was evidence. And for the first time since this began, the story no longer belonged to her. Once Lily admitted the lie publicly, everything moved faster than she expected. Retractions do not erase damage. They confirm it. People who had stayed quiet began speaking. Messages reached my lawyer from individuals Lily had contacted months earlier, asking them to support her if things went wrong. The pattern was clear. This was not a breakdown. It was preparation. Blake stopped communicating with her entirely. He moved out of the temporary place they had shared and returned his keys without a word. When Lily tried to reach him, he blocked her. That silence broke her more than confrontation ever could. My lawyer filed the final documents the same day. Defamation, attempted extortion, fraud, no dramatic announcements, just filings. Once paperwork exists, stories stop mattering. Lily responded by trying to negotiate again. She sent messages through intermediaries, offering cooperation, apologies, explanations. Each message carried the same request beneath the surface. Make this stop. I declined every attempt. Negotiation only works before the truth is documented. After that, it is irrelevant. A week later, Lily's employer contacted her. Someone had sent them the screenshots, not me. People who feel misled often overcorrect. By the end of the day, she was placed on leave pending review. That outcome had nothing to do with revenge. It was the natural result of using public platforms as weapons. Blake signed the divorce papers without argument. He waived claims he had once demanded aggressively. He asked for nothing. Not forgiveness, not explanation. He asked only how to finalize things quickly. I told him to follow his lawyer's instructions. We did not speak again. Lily tried one last approach. She sent a handwritten letter to my parents' house. In it, she admitted wrongdoing but framed herself as sacrificed. She wrote that I had always been stronger and that strength had finally turned against her. My parents did not respond. They forwarded the letter to my lawyer. That silence did more damage than any reply. By the end of the month, Lily's social circle had thinned to almost nothing. People distance themselves quietly from liars once the risk becomes personal. Invitations stopped. Messages slowed. Support evaporated. She tried to rebuild the story one final time, telling a new version where everyone misunderstood her intentions. It did not work. Once credibility is gone, every explanation sounds like manipulation. I did not watch her unravel. I focused on closing files, ending accounts, reclaiming routines that had been disrupted by chaos. Stability returned without announcement. One evening, my lawyer called and said the case would proceed without settlement. Lily's side had no leverage left. The facts were fixed. The consequences would follow. I thanked her and ended the call. The story was no longer unfolding. It was concluding. And Lily had finally learned what happens when a lie is asked to carry more weight than it can hold. The hearing was scheduled without drama. No press, no audience, just a room where words carried weight because they were recorded. Lily arrived with a new lawyer. Blake did not attend. He submitted a statement instead. That absence mattered more than his presence ever could. Lily spoke first. She tried to sound composed. She admitted to lying about the pregnancy. She admitted to making public claims without evidence. She denied malicious intent. That denial was expected. Intent is always the last thing people surrender. My lawyer responded by presenting sequence. Not emotion, not reaction. Timeline, messages, demands, retractions. Each step showed cause followed by choice. Lies only survive in isolation. In sequence, they collapse. Lily interrupted once. The judge stopped her. That interruption was noted. When asked why she continued even after being confronted privately, Lily said she felt trapped. She said she believed I would handle it the way I always had. That sentence changed the tone of the room. It reframed everything. This was not panic, this was expectation. The judge asked her to clarify. Lily tried to walk it back. She said she assumed family would protect family. The judge asked whether she believed protection included false accusations and financial pressure. Lily did not answer. My lawyer asked permission to play one final recording. It was Lily's voice again, calm and transactional, naming an amount and outlining conditions. Lily looked at the table while it played. When it ended, she said nothing. The judge asked if the voice was hers. Lily nodded. At that point, the outcome was no longer uncertain. The only remaining variable was scale. The ruling was direct. Lily was ordered to issue formal written retractions to every party she had contacted. She was barred from further public statements about me or Blake. Financial penalties were assessed for damages and legal costs. Any further violation would escalate consequences immediately. Lily asked if she could speak. The judge allowed it. She said she never meant for things to go this far. She said she lost control. She said she felt invisible for most of her life. The judge listened and then said something simple. Feeling unseen does not entitle someone to destroy another person's life. The hearing ended. Outside, Lily tried to approach me. My lawyer stepped between us. Lily stopped. She stood there for a moment, as if waiting for something that did not come. Then she turned and left. Blake finalized the divorce the following week. No disputes, no conditions. He signed everything he had once fought for. His silence was complete. By the end of the month, Lily's name no longer appeared in conversations that mattered. Not because people were cruel. Because trust, once broken publicly, does not quietly return. I closed the final folder and placed it where it would not be reopened. There was nothing left to prove. Only a life to continue, without noise, without lies, and without anyone expecting me to fix what they chose to break. The fallout did not end with the ruling. It only changed shape. 2 weeks after the hearing, my lawyer called to tell me Lily had violated the order. Not publicly, quietly. She had contacted someone from my workplace, hinting that the case had been misrepresented. It was subtle enough that she believed it would go unnoticed. It did not. The message was forwarded to my lawyer within an hour. By the end of the day, a formal notice was filed. Lily was summoned again, this time with no room for explanation. Violations do not invite debate. Blake reached out once more. It was the first time he had contacted me since the divorce finalized. He said Lily had shown up at his door unannounced. He said she was angry, accusing him of abandoning her when she needed support. He said she claimed none of this would have happened if he had stood by her. He told me he asked her to leave. He told me she refused. He told me he had called the police. That was the first time authorities entered the story, not as witnesses, as record keepers. Lily did not deny the incident. She reframed it. She said she had gone to retrieve personal items. She said Blake overreacted. The report noted otherwise. Details matter when they are written by people who do not care about feelings. A week later, the second hearing took place. Shorter, colder, Lily's lawyer spoke very little. The violation was confirmed. The judge imposed additional penalties and made the order explicit. No contact meant no contact. Any further attempt would trigger immediate enforcement. Lily did not speak this time. After that, the messages stopped completely. Not just to me, to everyone. She vanished from conversations the way people do when there is nothing left to argue, when every angle has been tried and failed. Blake relocated shortly after. He took a job in another city. He did not tell me where. I did not ask. Some exits are meant to be permanent. At work, the noise faded. The rumors dissolved once there was nothing new to feed them. Facts outlast speculation. They always do. One afternoon, I received a final update from my lawyer. The case was closed. No appeals, no pending actions. Lily had complied with all orders. The matter was finished. I thanked her and ended the call. That night, I sat alone and reviewed nothing. No files, no messages, no evidence. For the first time in months, there was nothing left to monitor, nothing waiting to escalate. The suspense that had carried me through every step finally released its hold, not as relief, as certainty. Everything that needed to end had ended. And nothing from that story would follow me forward. The quiet that followed felt temporary, like the pause before something tried to resurface. I stayed alert. Lies rarely die cleanly. They wait for distraction. That distraction arrived in the form of an email forwarded to my lawyer from an unfamiliar address. The sender claimed to represent a media outlet interested in clarifying misconceptions around the case. The wording was careful. Neutral on the surface, curious underneath. Someone had reached out on Lily's behalf, hoping to reframe the story one last time. My lawyer responded with a single sentence. The matter is closed. Any further inquiry will be treated as harassment. The outlet did not reply. Neither did Lily. That silence confirmed the attempt had been hers. Days later, Blake's name surfaced again, not in my life but in records. Lily had filed a civil claim against him, accusing him of emotional manipulation and abandonment. It was the same pattern recycled. Shift blame, create noise, force engagement. Blake's attorney contacted mine to confirm whether I would be involved. I declined immediately. My role in that story was finished. Without me, the claim lost weight. It was dismissed within weeks. That dismissal mattered more than the ruling itself. It established a pattern that could no longer be denied. Lily's credibility was gone everywhere, not just with me. One evening, I received a message from a relative I had not spoken to in years. They apologized. They said they had believed Lily at first. They said they understood now. I thanked them and ended the conversation. Closure does not require reconciliation. Shortly after, my parents asked to visit. This time, there were no accusations, only questions. They wanted to understand when things had shifted so far beyond repair. I told them it happened the moment the truth stopped being enough for Lily. That answer ended the discussion. By the end of the month, Lily had moved out of state, not announced, not explained. It appeared in a forwarding address attached to legal correspondence. Distance was her final strategy. It did not change anything. The system she had tried to exploit remembered her. Employers, lawyers, courts, people do not forget patterns that cost them time and credibility. I closed the last remaining account tied to the marriage and transferred the balance into one that required no second signature. That action was symbolic, but symbols matter when they end cycles. That night I slept without interruption. No messages, no alerts, no waiting. The suspense that had driven every decision finally resolved into something stable. Not peace, control. The story had reached the point where nothing more could be taken from me. And nothing more would be. I thought it was over. That assumption almost proved costly. 3 months after Lily moved away, my lawyer called late in the evening. She said a new filing had appeared under Lily's name, not against me directly, against the ruling itself. She was claiming coercion. She was claiming she had been pressured into admissions and silence. It was a last attempt to reopen everything by reframing the past. The claim was weak, but weak claims still create noise. The court scheduled a review hearing, limited scope, no witnesses, paper only. Lily submitted a statement accusing everyone else of controlling the narrative. She said she had been isolated. She said she had agreed to terms under fear. She said the truth had never been allowed to surface. My lawyer read it once and closed the file. She responded with Lily's own timeline, including the messages sent after the ruling, the violation notice, and the attempt to contact my workplace. The pattern was undeniable, not pressure, persistence. 2 days before the review, Blake submitted an affidavit. Voluntary. Unprompted. He stated that Lily had pressured him repeatedly to maintain the lie even after proof surfaced. He stated that he had been encouraged to threaten me financially. He stated that none of Lily's later claims matched his experience. That affidavit ended the matter before it began. The court dismissed Lily's motion without hearing. The order included a warning. Further filings of a similar nature would be considered abuse of process. That phrase carried weight. It closed doors Lily had been trying to pry open. The next contact came indirectly. A mutual acquaintance mentioned Lily had been telling people she planned to write everything down and publish her side. The intention was obvious. If courts failed, she would try public sympathy again. I did nothing. 2 weeks passed, no article appeared, no posts followed. Publishing requires credibility. Without it, stories stall before they leave drafts. Then one final message arrived at my lawyer's office. Lily requested confirmation that I would not pursue further action if she remained silent permanently. The wording was careful, final, exhausted. My lawyer replied with a copy of the existing orders and nothing else. That was the last communication connected to her. At work, my role expanded. Responsibilities increased. No one referenced the past. Institutions move forward when problems resolve cleanly. One afternoon, while reviewing unrelated documents, I realized something had changed. I was no longer checking for updates, no longer anticipating escalation. The vigilance that had kept me ahead was no longer needed. That absence felt unfamiliar. The suspense that had once sharpened every decision finally dissipated, not because the threat was gone, but because it had been neutralized completely. There was nothing left for Lily to exploit. No leverage, no audience, no opening. The story had reached its true end, not with forgiveness or reconciliation, but with certainty. Nothing else was coming. And for the first time since this began, that certainty held. The last confirmation arrived without warning and without drama, which made it more convincing than anything else before it. My lawyer forwarded me a court notice stating that Lily's name had been flagged for repeated frivolous filings across jurisdictions. It was not a punishment. It was a classification. A quiet administrative decision that ensured any future claims she attempted would be reviewed under strict scrutiny. Systems remember patterns even when people pretend not to. That notice ended every remaining possibility. There were no more threats, no more indirect messages, no more attempts to reshape the past. Lily had exhausted every path that relied on distortion, pressure, or sympathy. What remained was silence that could not be broken without consequence. Blake never contacted me again. Months later, I learned through records that he had finalized his relocation and changed employers. He did not dispute anything. He did not defend himself. His retreat was complete. Some people survive collapse by disappearing from the structure they helped damage. I closed the final legal file and archived it permanently. The action felt deliberate, not emotional. Evidence no longer needed to be held close. It existed where it belonged. Life resumed with a different rhythm. Not lighter, but steadier. The kind of stability that comes from knowing there is nothing waiting to surface. No hidden messages. No delayed reactions. No false endings. One evening, while reviewing unrelated work, I realized I had not thought about Lily in weeks. That realization mattered more than any ruling. The absence was real. The story had not ended because I won. It ended because every lie had been tested and failed, because every attempt to shift blame had been documented, because every threat had been met with structure instead of reaction. Nothing followed me forward. There were no final confrontations, no dramatic closure, just a complete withdrawal of influence. Lily's version of events no longer existed anywhere that mattered. Blake's presence no longer intersected with my life. The damage had been contained, then neutralized. When people later asked how it ended, I gave no details. Endings lose power when they are repeated. What mattered was that it ended cleanly. The last move was not confrontation. It was continuity. I continued without interruption, without correction, and without anyone expecting me to absorb consequences that were never mine. And that was the final outcome they never planned for. You have reached the end of the text.